you ever tried to read the whole Bible from beginning to end, from start to finish, Genesis to Revelation? I know I have when I was younger in my college days, and I began in the book of Genesis. It was very interesting. Adam, Eve, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I got to the book of Exodus, Moses and the plagues of Egypt and the Exodus from Pharaoh. And then I got to the laws in Exodus chapter 20, and I fell off the wagon. And I never finished the Old Testament for a number of years because it was difficult. And I think that my story is similar to many people out there. Most Christians who are interested in Scripture, interested in their faith, want to read the Bible. And yet, at the same time, when they pick up the pages of the Old Testament, it's downright hard to understand. It's difficult. It's like a foreign land. We don't understand the people. We don't know the places. We don't understand the customs. And there are lots of difficult passages and moral issues that are raised by the Old Testament. So in this series on the Old Testament, this in-depth study of the Old Testament, what I tried to do was step back and give you the big picture of salvation history from the book of Genesis through the book of Malachi, answering some of the key questions that Christians have when they come to the pages of the Old Testament. Questions such as, where did we get the Old Testament? How did we get the Old Testament? When was it written? And why are there different versions of the Old Testament? What about the book of Genesis and the book of Exodus? The stories of Adam and Eve, Noah, the patriarchs, Abraham, David. Are these historical or are they legend, right? What is the genre of the books of the Old Testament? How do we understand them? Also, too, what about the difficult passages in the Old Testament? Passages such as the command in the book of Joshua to engage in holy war against the Canaanites in the land, or the passages about clean and unclean food in the book of Leviticus. What is the meaning of all these passages in their original context? And even more importantly, how does the Old Testament and all of the events and realities described in the Old Testament, how do these point forward to Jesus Christ? How are they fulfilled in the life, the death, and the resurrection of Christ? In other words, what about Old Testament typology, the prefiguration of Christ in the people and passages of the Old Testament scriptures? In this in-depth series on the Old Testament, I take you through the big picture of salvation history, starting with the book of Genesis all the way through, and try to show you how the church answers those questions, how scholars have answered those questions over the year, and how Christians, as people of faith, can dive into the Old Testament and help understand it in a way that's not only illuminating or informative, but exciting. One of the most exciting things that I get to do as a teacher is open up this world of the Old Testament to my students. And every one of them tells me, Dr. Pitre, once I understand the Old Testament in its proper context and as pointing forward to Jesus, all of a sudden the New Testament comes alive as well. So as you'll see, in this series on the Old Testament, St. Augustine was right. The New Testament is hidden. It's concealed in the Old, and the Old is revealed in the New. It is going to be Christ that will give us the key to unlocking the mysteries of the Old Testament. So if you've ever wanted to know more about Genesis, Exodus, Adam, Eve, Noah, Moses, Abraham, the patriarchs, King David, King Solomon, and all those stories that can often be strange and difficult, then I invite you to come with me on this journey into the world of the Old Testament and to open it up, its history, its literature, and its theology, in order to see Jesus and the New Testament in a whole new light.